passionately involved in R&D and has been instrumental in starting the stem cell and primary cell division in HiMedia with a vision to foster regenerative medicine and stem cell therapy research in our country. She played a key role in the development of the viral transport medium for H1N1 during the 2009 pandemic in a short span of 2 months. This media was later used during the COVID-19 pandemic all over India for transporting patient samples. So here's inviting Dr. Priti to deliver her talk.
Can you hear me? This is my first time in IIT, and when you say IIT, it inspires all kinds of feelings within oneself. Pride, respect. For me, it's a little bit of fear. I was never a very academically oriented person, and standing in an IIT forum and giving a talk is giving me a little bit of jitters. Jokes apart, good morning everyone. It's a pleasure to address this August gathering. When Dr. Abhijit invited me to give a talk, he specifically told me to bring the industry perspective on board, the problems faced or the challenges faced by the industry and how academia can support industry. And I believe that research primarily should be directed to alleviate human suffering and for a betterment of quality of human life. And while we are saying India shining, being the 5th largest economy in the world, being the pharmacy to the world with 20% of global exports coming from India, where do we stand in terms of the healthcare? As per a study in Lancet, India ranks 145th in healthcare. We have only one NCE, a national or a new chemical entity, launched till date. We've and I really wonder why this should be so. We have Indians, at the helm of affairs in Microsoft, Google, you name it, everywhere. But also in R&D of big pharma and biopharma, or you name any prestigious or premier institute or hospital globally, we have Indians there. How can we replicate the same model here? How can we become, from a Me Too nation, we become, the center of innovation? Coming to the topic of today's seminar, when we say next generation therapeutics, regenerative medicine, 3D bioprinting, tissue engineering are the buzzwords. And while we're talking about tissue engineering, talking about making an artificial liver or artificial heart, it's very fancy, but here's my take on it. First, there's technologies at a very nascent stage. And second, making a structural organ is one thing, and making a functional organ is altogether a different thing. Having said this, what can we do right now to have an immediate impact on healthcare? Or what can we do to set up a base so that these long-term goals become a reality? These are the two questions that I'm going to address today. I have a small case study to present. So when I finished my MBBS, I was a medical officer in Burns ward for 6 months. And if there is any place on earth close to hell, believe me, the Burns ward is one of them. So here are a few statistics. Here are a few statistics of burns and diabetic foot ulcers, both of which require immediate wound closure. We have 1.4 lakh deaths annually because of burns and 1 lakh amputations from diabetic foot, out of which 50,000 succumb to death in 2 years. If you consider a 70% burns patient in US, the survival rate is more than 50%. I've given a very modest estimate. It should be around 70–80%, but I'm just saying 50%. And the survival rate is 0 to 1 1% in India, which is almost none. If you look at the hospital cost, it takes about 25,000 rupees per day of hospitalization. And if you consider a hospitalization stay of 3 to 4 weeks, 5 to 6, 7 lakhs rupees is just a hospitalization cost. With tissue engineering or with artificial skin grafts, you can bring down the hospital stay to 7 to 10 days, which will translate into a hospitalization cost of 1.5 to 2 lakh rupees. You can increase the survival rate by more than 50%. The deformities will be so less, which will have a huge impact on the patient's physical and mental health. The catch here is an engineered skin graft like Integra will cost 32 lakhs for a 40% surface area. Commercial skin substitutes like Integra, Dermagraft, Appligraft have been have been launched in the late 1990s, and here we are in 2022 without an indigenous skin graft. So when we started the stem cell and primary cell division in 2011, it was primarily with a focus to promote regenerative medicine. And though we came out with a skin cell platform within a year's time, we had very little knowledge on biomaterials or ECM or scaffolds that would be required to make an artificial skin. Also, there was a problem of getting a continuous supply of skin samples, and we approached a few big hospitals, and one problem was, of course, the bureaucracy, and second problem was they had this notion that industry makes a huge amount of profit, and why should they have so much profit, and they almost perceived us, some of them perceived us as if we were sharks in a suit, and the proposals they gave were just not viable, and we dropped the idea altogether. The second case study I want to present is a cost model for organoids. There are already a few global companies who have made organoids and organoids models from different lineages, and also have all the supporting media and reagents that are required to grow them. But if you look, but is that cost affordable to us? Maybe for a few premier institutes, it would be, but as a community, if we want to transgress from a 2D to a 3D platform, is it affordable? I have just put a sample case here to grow one organoid, one organoid. If you take a cancer organoid, you would require something like 50,000 rupees, considering that the cancer tissue comes free. If you want to develop a iPSC derived organoid, the cost would be not less than 3.5 lakh, and this is just the running cost of the consumables. If you have to characterize the organoid, you would require something like 2.2 CR just in capital cost, and another 5 lakhs as a running cost. So if you have to make one organoid, it would cost you anything from 3.5 lakh, 3 lakhs to 8.5 lakh, just as a running cost to make one organoid, which has a finite lifespan of not more than 1 or 2 months. You can do the maths, and you can calculate the number of experiments that you would have to do to get some tangible result. The point I want to make here is we need to have an ecosystem here. We need to have an ecosystem of not just industry and academia, but of clinicians, of chemists, biologists, polymer scientists, mechanical engineers, who all work together to translate research and technology into commercially viable therapeutic modalities. It's also imperative that this ecosystem works towards not just bringing down the cost of the final therapy or the final product, but also to bring down the cost of this entire ecosystem. Because when the cost of this entire ecosystem comes down, it will be fully functional and aggressive. So it's very important, to bring down the cost of the ecosystem. I'm short of time, so just quickly, this is on the right-hand side are the offerings that we right now have for regenerative medicine. What we don't have and what we can immediately start together is developing ECM and scaffolds, developing cell sprays for conditions like vitiligo, and also develop artificial skin. Talking about 3D culture, we are coming with an excellence center in our new office in Thane, in Waghray State, Thane, which will be commissioned in March. Here are the list of, so it's a fully equipped lab, and this center was primarily, the primary goal of this center is to foster R&D and also foster collaborations and trainings. Right now, what we've started is, a generation of iPSC cells and media, development of organoid and organoid models, and also bioinks and bioprinted models of bioinks and edible inks through which we plan to make bioprinted models in future. This is Cero, which is a 3D bioreactor, and it maintains the organoids for minimum 3 months. One particular scientist in Germany has maintained the organoids for a year. This is a image of cardiomyocytes organoids developed using Cero at Max Planck University. We are also collaborating with NBIL Bangalore, Piyush is here, for developing the 3D bioprinting technology together. Last, just to wrap up, the collaborative, this is where we can collaborate together, translation of proof of concept technologies, co-development of scalable products and technologies, skill development program under the NBM BIREC initiative, customized products for not just academia and industry, and the most important is we can have joint PhD and postdoctoral fellowship and internship programs. Just to wrap up, the point I want to make is we need to make a strong ecosystem. We need to connect the dots. When we are looking out for research projects, they can be done in consultation with the industry with a specific aim to develop a particular therapy. In the COVID pandemic, Bharat Biotech and Serum Institute of India have given so much credibility to the bioscience industry and to the nation as whole. We are the only nation to have vaccinated more people outside India than in its own country. I think it is time for all of us to come together, join the dots, and work towards a common goal. Thank you. I'm sorry I had to go very fast because of short of time. I hope it wasn't too fast. I think so, and it never struck us. So we donated the Skin Generation Lab to National Burn Center with the same thought process, but we never thought of involving, the masses into this initiative. Yes, and thank you for the wonderful advice.
Interesting. So I'd like to know what are the regulatory framework for such kind of products in India, like skin graft. Do they still go under same stringent process the way drug discovery and development and approval happen, or is there a different thing?
Frankly, Dr. Amjad, we have not explored it because we dropped making an artificial skin graft very early on because of all the problems we faced. But as far as I know, I don't really know actually.
Dr. Sanjeev Gupta in the audience, he can probably answer this one, but probably he hasn't come yet. So Jay.
I just wanted to answer that question quickly. So, such products would come under the medical device rules, which recently have undergone a major revamp. Yes. So basically, it would require, to answer your question, so it would require the usual approvals, but it's a different process for the medical devices and for any active material of that sort. It would have a pilot study followed by a pivotal study, both manufactured under GMP conditions with first a trial manufacturing license and then of course a regular free-to-sale license for given indications. And the usual preclinical studies and all testing in GLP labs. So it's as good or as bad as a drug trial, except there are two stages, and cell-based materials will have, of course, a higher standard of sourcing and so on. So that environment is still evolving, but it's important for all of us involved in this research to appreciate that, and a standardized source of material that Priti's company and others could offer would be a way ahead, because if that gets accepted in one FDA trial, then that would be a good, or a CDSCO trial, that would be a good predicate on which others can also base their devices. So that's the regulatory framework, sir, to answer.
Dr. Amjad, I couldn't answer because he's right, because we had approached the CDSCO and there are no concrete guidelines for this actually. I don't know, this was like 10 years back, and if there are any now, I wouldn't know.
So there are no guidelines per se. Everything is on a case-to-case basis and examined by the subject expert committee. So they would actually be the final rulers on that. This is an evolving field even for them, because CDSCO doesn't have the wherewithal to understand medical devices as it did with drugs. So it's still something that is regulatorily difficult landscape to navigate, but it's possible. I mean, there are many such things done. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bellari. More questions?
Hi, Doctor.
Hi, Visha.
So nice talk. Just wanted to comment on the ecosystem. So if you look at the cosmetic acts and testing for cosmetic acts, there's a company called Pvt Skin from France. And if you look at the regulatory, the setup, the ecosystem in France is that from cosmetic surgeries, typically skin is harvested under informed consent, and the regulatory authority have given Skin or whatever the company is, they have given them the permission to culture artificial skin, and that is marketed in a very beautiful transwell kind of a plate system, which is used for skin corrosion, skin irritation, and all those OECD guidelines, under OECD guidelines.
Yeah.
So similar kind of model, if academics and industry could collaboratively propose to CDSCO, then that is probably one of the way forwards.
That's the reason I brought out this topic, and that was what I was talking to Dr. Abhijit before the talk.
Okay. Yeah.
But
So
just on
many
that point,
congratulations.
EpiSkin,
Yes.
EpiSkin, the cost of EpiSkin is $13,000 for a 1 centimeter square,
Yes.
and Integra is 2,000. So,
Yeah.
I mean, these numbers also,
Yeah,
I
we
can't
just-
comprehend the cost of therapy, if you
We
talk
just
about
got
it.
a quote, 0.5 centimeter square from France is 3.25 lakhs.
Yes.
That is just one sample. So forget about doing it in triplicates and so on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time, we are not taking any questions right now, but Dr. Warke will be around.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Warke, for that very interesting talk. She'll be around, so feel free to meet up with her with your questions.